what I'm going to talk about is the state of cloud security. So this topic, I made it as simple as possible for bringing everybody at the same level. So with chapters, can you go to the next slide, please? So the agenda of this was this topic. So a quick disclaimer, the views and thoughts and opinions expressed are solely my own, not necessarily associated to any of my employers, organizations, and committees, or other groups or individuals that I was associated with. All the contents and images in this presentation are royalty-free and extracted from free to distribution, and the narration and the material should be for education and academic purpose only. So with that, I'll outline what I'm going to speak is basically the cloud computing basics to bring everybody on the same page to understand what each of these, what cloud computing is all about. So some basics with some examples, and also I'll give some cloud adoption trends and the security implications of cloud computing, and finally some cloud security best practices, and we'll have a Q&A quickly if time permits, or we can have it at the end of the session. So thank you. Now let me introduce what makes a cloud. Yeah. So it essentially needs to have certain characteristics. Next slide, please. What makes a cloud is basically having these essential characteristics, which when it comes to resource pooling, so you have computing, you have storage, you have network infrastructure resources, which can be pooled and used for, as a multi-tenancy model. Rapid elasticity so that you can expand on demand whenever you need. Today, you may need a computing power, or sometimes you may not need the computing power. So that's the rapid elasticity, the agility that the cloud provides is immense. We are not specific to any public cloud. We are talking about anything in cloud, whether it is private or public. Yeah. So here it also provides broad network access, which gives you an outline in terms of connectivity and as well as infrastructure and the tools that it provides for whether it is security, operational, or infrastructure related tools. On-demand self-service, so most of the cloud provide you an on-demand self-service, which will be used for you to manage your resources at your own pace and at your own liking. Measured service, so pay as on demand, pay as per use, so that all the services are metered and then you pay it as per use. So these are the essential characteristics which makes a cloud very high level definition. I'll be using terms cloud and cloud computing interchangeably. So when I say cloud, it is obviously we are referring to the cloud computing. Next slide, please. Faros, can you move to the next slide? All right, so how the services model are delivered when it comes to cloud. So I have simplified into broad 3 levels, which are industry most of them major grouping in terms of service model: software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. They are also referred as an SPI tiers. So, and each tier offers you certain convenience and as well as a certain pricing and as well as certain features and functionalities that are essential for them. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. And in terms of deployment models, it provides, a cloud can be deployed in a public cloud. Yeah, it can be a private cloud, or it can be community and hybrid. Giving an examples of public cloud, you have Google's Azure, and you have all those public clouds which are being offered by IBM, Alibaba, and for various purposes. Private is the one which are hosted within your premises, or it could be something which is geofenced in your data center, which is shared. So community cloud is the one which is basically used for sharing a larger community. For an example is the GN network, or the government network, which is used in Qatar, is one such an example. Hybrid cloud, I'll take a moment to explain what hybrid cloud is in the next slide. Yeah, can you please move to the next slide? So this is a big picture. So you have the essential characters when it comes to what I have presented in the previous slide. In broad network access, rapid elasticity, measured service, on-demand self-service, and the resource pooling are the essential characteristics of a cloud computing offered in service model, which is in the SPI, or the SaaS, PaaS, and infrastructure as a service, which I'm going to explain with an example as in the next slide. And these are the deployment models, whether it can be deployed. Yeah. So multi and hybrid cloud. We use cloud for a lot of purposes. It is important to know what is a multi-cloud and what is a hybrid cloud, because it's now a business reality. So multi-cloud, for just to get the definition right, is an enterprises, if it utilizes multi-cloud for you know um, public services, or which are offered by multiple service providers, uh, um, like in this case, let's take an example which is very much used in most of the organizations, where you have front end an AWS, and then on the back end, which is hosted with an exchange services offered by Azure. So AWS is an offering which comes from Amazon, and Azure is offering from Microsoft. So these two combinations make a multi-cloud, which has been offered by public service. Where a hybrid cloud is an inclusion of your private cloud infrastructure along with one or more cloud services. And that's a hybrid cloud. But now, if you see, hybrid cloud is being used by most of the organizations and enterprises because it provides you a significant advantage. One, it prevents you from the lock into a single cloud provider. Thus, you take an advantage of a cloud arbitrage and the price advantage that you can negotiate with multiple service cloud. And while you get the best breed of IT services offered by different like SAP, IBM, and others who are well known for their database management, right? Next slide, please. So I'll take this pizza example in terms of how how we differentiate from an on-prem to the SPA tiers, which I just mentioned. So let's consider you prepare a pizza at home. So you need the ingredients like a dough or a tomato sausage, cheese, toppings, oven, soda like Coca-Cola and others, and a dining table and eating. All this you prepare it at home and then you serve it on the table. I know it's Ramadan, but this is the best example that we can to make this point clear. So is to make home. So that's an on-prem. Yeah. So if you are having a take and bake, like you get a frozen or something that is prepared outside, so you don't bother about the dough, you don't bother about the tomato sauce, neither cheese nor toppings. So you bring it and use the oven, combine with the soda, put it on dining table and eat it. So that's an infrastructure as a service. Now, if your pizza is delivered at home, so you're not going to, heat it up in the oven. Probably you may use a microwave oven just to heat it once more, but that's not the point. The point here is if it's delivered, you really are not responsible for the tiers below what you are. You just put it on the dining table and eat it with the soda. Yeah. Whereas if you're dining out, you really don't care about the dining table, nor the soda. So everything you bother about eating and you enjoy your. So that's software as a service. So this, can you go to the next line? So if you look at each of this analogy, it's an on-prem infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and a software as a service is the best relation that you can make. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the security and the responsibility from an operations perspective. Who's responsible for what? This is the key and thing that everybody has to know, that where is the responsibility that it begins and it ends. Taking the pizza example, so this is a consumer responsibility and provider responsibility. If you are using infrastructure as a service, you are not responsible for the physical infrastructure security, which are traditionally used at on-prem services. And whereas you are partially responsible for network security and operations system security, or OS security, middleware, application security, and the data access security. And in the case of platform as a service, you are not looking at the OS level and anything below that, right? So you are focusing partially on your middleware security and application security and the data access security. Finally, as a software as a service, as a consumer, as an as an operations and a security, you are responsible only for the data access. Any tiers below that is the provider's responsibility. I hope you got the message. That sets the stage for what we are going to discuss. So let me give you a little bit of a cloud adoption trends. What is happening, how fast it is happening, and what is happening in the industry. It is important to know while we go with the cloud adoption. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide, please. So if you see cloud migration is rapidly growing. Today, as of we speak, this is statistics as of 23, where you have 39% are already running more than 50% of the workloads in the cloud. And this is tend to increase as we go ahead, with almost 58% will be running more than 50% of the workloads in the cloud. What it means is publicly hosted clouds are the biggest migration that is happening, while the private has already happened in some places where you have at least one of the organizations have already virtualized in some form or the other, because that's probably a beginning of the journey of the cloud. When it comes to publicly hosted, although EMEA region, where Qatar is part of the EMEA region, is 50% already level of adoption taking place, which is lagging behind when it comes to North America and as well as APJ, which is Asia Pacific, Japan put together. But we are catching up. There is a large scale adoption going on, and there is a lot of migration that is still growing, and this is just the beginning of the journey. So the adoption, how this adoption takes place, whether you are using one single provider or one, two, or three. So if you look at 69% of the most of the consumers today are using two or more cloud providers. So nobody is looking at only one single provider. They are looking at multiple. So if you look at one of the fastest growing cloud service provider is Google, which has accelerated in the last couple of months. When you compare Azure and the AWS steadily growing, and others are as well as catching up: Oracle, IBM, Rackspace, Alibaba, and many more, which are not probably listed in the top of them. So what are the priorities? Yeah, that's fine. Let's go ahead. So cloud security priorities, what are the service priorities? If you look at number one priority for everybody and number one concern, you will see this message coming in many slides from here on. The point is that security is number one concern and a priority for all organizations, besides the computing power and the storage and the business applications which come into consideration. Yep. So what are the barriers? So now that we know that it is adoption, why people are hesitating, why organizations are hesitating? In my best experience that I can relate, there's one biggest hindrance for cloud adoption has always been the security. Combined with legal and regulatory compliance, the statistics show that more than 60% of the concerns are related to. Yes, there are other concerns which are related to staff, resourcing, and skilling that is necessary, both at business level and technical level, and integration with the existing. Some organizations are still using some legacy systems which may not support, so they are in the cloud journey as they go ahead. Next slide, please. What are the implications? Now that we have talked about journey, so we have talked about how rapidly the cloud is getting adopted, how value that it provides to many of our organizations, not just from the cost perspective, but also operational efficiency and a lot other features. As we also noted that security is number one priority as well as concern. So let's look into some of those implications. 43% of this is based on the survey which was carried out by various CISOs. It is very obvious that 43% of survey responses say that public cloud is their number one risk, significantly versus than on-prem. So that's a key message. So the risk of the breach on the public cloud is far more higher than the private cloud, but they both are not immune to any attacks if we are only talking about the breach. Public cloud security concerns, if you look at is highly concerned, extremely concerned to very high concern to moderately concerned, which puts 95% of the people that security is definitely a concern. So I'm repeating the same message just to emphasize how important is cloud security, how important is this Cloud Security Alliance, just to bring that narration. So these are, I'm taking the support from the statistics which are publicly available. So operations, so besides security, there are other operational challenges, which security is also part of it. So lack of qualified staff, compliance, visibility, consistent security policy. These are all the operation, because we are you have there are some capabilities which are on-prem, some are offered in an infrastructure as a service, and some are offered as a software as a service. So which are those? How you maintain policies? Because certain places you need to have an agreement with the service provider to manage your compliance regulatory requirements and as well as the security policies for your organization. So that's where the operation security challenges come in. So if you look at the priorities, again, security priorities are misconfiguration. So all security professionals are only thinking about how this misconfigurations can be prevented on cloud so that there is no breach. Because more, as you know, statistically, most of the security breaches or number one cause is due to misconfigurations. Securing major cloud apps already in use, that is another priority, because some apps are already used, so some are in already in operation. So it is important to secure as the change management takes place when you have new releases coming in for those apps. Defending against malware. So we are no stranger to the malware which is being created every day. Hundreds and thousands are created, in a month. So all to catch up with this and defending all those malware, and your security teams have to work much more, not only monitor the on-prem assets, but also the digital assets which are spread across multi-cloud. And reaching the regulatory compliance, don't tell me about it, because this is one of the most challenging aspect when it comes to CISO's nightmare. Yep. Next slide, please. So the multi-cloud, specifically what challenges it offers. Skilling is completely, because if you talk about misconfiguration, again, we relate to that we are not having the right skill to manage a complete solution across all the cloud environments. And multi-cloud magnifies it further, because one may be an Azure expert, may not be an AWS expert, may not be an expert in other cloud services, because each cloud services offers different tools, different techniques, different tactics to handle them. So the number one is to get the right skills to deploy and manage a complete solution across all the cloud environment. Second biggest challenge is data protection and privacy for each environment. Understanding how the solutions would fit together, as I said, is another major challenge. And the service integration options and loss of visibility. So if you ask if you go in reverse, go back to the previous slide. Yeah. So if you go back to the loss of visibility and control is definitely a challenge for most of us, because you can't protect what you can't see. So it is important that you need to have a control on the visibility and then the rest of the. So all these challenges are tightly related, but one specific challenge that I wanted to highlight was loss of visibility and control, which actually narrates everything when it comes to cloud security challenges or concern. Again, it's just to show the threats and the risk associated is the wrong setup or the misconfiguration always remains high, which we have spoken in the previous slide. Exfiltration of sensitive data. Now we are guided by several privacy laws. We have many organizations, including the ones which we are not previously managing the privacy data, are now managing some kind of sensitive private information. Some banks definitely, use the PCI DSS related information. Healthcare uses the HIPAA part of the information. So exfiltration of the sensitive data has become really, really important. Unless you categorize them really well into the categories which are either defined by the FIFA cybersecurity framework or the National Information Assurance, some kind of categorization of data is extremely important to ensure that the exfiltration of data secure. Today we are not talking about, we are talking about APIs as a best connectivity to most of our cloud assets. When it comes to that, there are lots of tokens that are being access tokens which are used and which are using a static passwords, which are either embedded as part of the software or being used by some developers. This is a really growing concern, and as well as the unauthorized access as is spoken. So just wanted to do a quick time check and take a little breather. How are we doing with time?
Very good, Sheikh. We've got 10 more minutes left.
All right, good. So top security incidents, if you look at risk introduced through early in application development, workload images with vulnerabilities or malware, vulnerable APIs, which I talked about, and as well as the web application, unrestricted network access. We are talking about the lateral movement, which was predominantly an on-prem issue, now has become an issue when it comes to a cloud environment, whether it is
Sheikh, your
Sheikh, you're
mic
muted.
is muted.
Somebody probably muted me. Did I go on mute? Can you hear me, guys? All right, so I don't know where I got muted, but I did mention about the 5 security incidents which are happening. Okay, we can go to the next slides, which is basically which I have already spoken in the previous slides. Now let's talk about some best practices. So in order to take a help of, because there are lots of best practices which are available from definitely our parent body, the CSA, CSA Global, and as well as other service providers who are offering. But one mention which I want to do is to have a bigger picture is about the Cloud Adoption Framework, or CAF. So what it gives you is a 6 different layers, where business layer is the topmost layer, which is where you start with the strategy, innovation, and the partnership, and the business insights are the drivers for getting your strategy clear when it comes to security. So people, governance, platform, they all are interrelated. And my emphasis for this meeting or this presentation is on security. How do we achieve, next slide, achieve confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data and the workload, and how we protect our infrastructure, security governance. Farouz, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, all right. So my emphasis today is on the security, which talks about several, and I'd like to highlight one key input, that is identity and access management. First step towards any onboarding or the cloud is the first to create, because unlike on-prem, where you provide the resources and get the infrastructure elements first, then create an identity. In cloud, it happens reverse. First, you create an identity, whether it is root or whether it is an admin who will have certain privileges. Identity and access management plays first, and then the rest of those things, whether it comes to, is always important. I'm talking about purely on onboarding or adoption framework. Definitely, there are a lot of other steps, particularly from the governance point of view. I just wanted to highlight on the onboarding. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, what I have done is simplified from various resources. I have some references, and as well as the CSA provides you some really good tools and available for all of us at no cost, and most of them which are required. And while we talk about very generic cloud security best practices, which needs probably no money, it starts with people, training and educating and employees, whether skilling your internal staff is the most important. Understanding your shared security model, yeah, how the responsibility, where it starts, where it ends. I have given an example in my cloud basics session where I took an example of a pizza. If you can take that as an example and see where it's and correlate it with your tiers that you will be offering, it makes much more understanding of what a shared services responsibility model will look like. Asking a cloud service detailed security questions. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a good amount of resources CSA offers us, which you can in the form of CAKE. It's called CA IQ, pronounced as CAKE. And as well as cloud control metrics, which I'll be talking to you about in the next slide. So these 3 are something that you can start, when onboarding. Establishing and enforcing cloud security policies, whether you take your organization policy and also tweak it to meet the latest compliance requirements, and as well as this, double check on those compliance requirements, ensure that they are enforced, and establish and put it into practice. Conduct audits, pen test, and vulnerability testing, so that you know how to get whether to test your ability, whether you're doing a good job. So these will and also help you with the improving your security posture. Efficiently respond to security incident management now becomes more complicated. You have service provider not just in the country, but it could be hosted outside the country, or it could be anywhere in the world. So they need to be included as part of the security incident response. Deploying an identity access, this I would call it as a number one most important point. Because based on my experience in the region, many organizations struggle to just implement the identity and access management solution within an on-prem itself. So, and many have the misconception thinking that we have an AD, it's an identity and access management solution. Yes, it could be part of an identity access management solution, but it is not the complete solution. Using an IDPS technology now becomes really important to know the intrusions. Most of the cloud service provider and the CASB solutions do offer IDPS as part of your solution itself, depending on which tier that you go for. Encrypt data in motion and rest. So this is the data protection itself. When we talk about the entire cloud, at the bottom end of your security is your data, and it really needs to be given the due attention and care with a top priority. CASB, or a cloud security solution, and enabling log is one good service provider that you could use, or you could use the one which has been provided by any of the service provider which you are using. Enabling security logs and monitoring the intrusion, which is correlating with the IDPS technology, but it can be done at an application level. And the security, I started my journey with the SIM from very long ago. Probably it goes back to 2002 and 2003 times. So where deployed, and one thing that I have based on experience, security professionals are way ahead than the business or the technology IT providers when it comes to logging and monitoring and having a visibility across what's happening across. So probably that can be leveraged and provide some value to the organization by using either a third-party SOC or also in-house SOC. Understanding and mitigating misconfiguration is one. So these are randomly listed here because just to bring the point and correlate it with the previous slides. So these are I'm open for any questions.